What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, thanks to the wicked team over at Yolopark, we're going to be checking out their Transformers, Rise of the Beasts, Apelinq, AMK Pro X Series model kits. Now, if you would like this or any of their previous characters, then be sure to check out the links down below and make sure to use the discount code Prime vs Prime. Now, this is a super exciting release for so many reasons, the main one being that this is the first figure ever created based on the Apelinq character from Rise of the Beasts. This is also the first entry into Yolopark's AMK Pro X Series, which appears to be a slightly more premium take on some of their previous model kits. So to see what this guy's packing, now let's do what he fell to in the movie. Let's maximize Apelinq into his robot mode. Now, finally maximizing his way onto the battlefield, here we have Apelinq fully transformed into his robot mode, and the design looks sick. Much like when in beast mode, it appears to be very similar in design to that of Optimus Primal, although I really like how Yolopark have integrated some of the slight differences. For example, a great carryover would be that cybernetic slick back, which I thought was a really awesome touch. This definitely made Apelinq appear to be slightly older in comparison to that of Optimus Primal. One piece of design though, which I'm a big fan of, would be the full-blown integration of the Beast Wars Optimus Primal over-the-shoulder cannons. To my knowledge, none of the live-action movie Maximals never actually used any full-blown firearms in the movie, so not only would have it been insane to have seen Apelinq fully maximized in the film, but had he deployed these bad boys on the battlefield, I'm almost certain that the Terracons would not have stood a chance. When it comes to the rest of the design, I'm really digging the integration of the asymmetrical shoulder armaments. Again, to match his design from the Beast mode, this looks awesome, and the painting and the sculpting is a massive step up in comparison to some of their past Rise of the Beast characters. Their chest unit in particular looks nuts. Not only has it been sculpted incredibly well, but it's also packing a punch when it comes to paintwork. This guy's been sculpted front side to back and appears to be severely battle damaged, and even the leg design ain't slacking. Again, it does appear to be very similar to that of Optimus Primal, but I really like the integration of the old medieval knight armor. Again, it does just make this guy appear to be slightly older in comparison to Optimus Primal. There are some big meaty chunks missing out of the armor, which makes me think this guy at one point may have gone up against Megatron. Even as we spin this bad boy around to the back, again, supremely detailed and painted. I'm really liking the inbuilt discs, which you can see packed beneath the shoulder blades, and some of the internal armor is seriously almost as detailed as some of the external armor. The only part of the design which I'm not the biggest fan of would be how, for the most part, they've slapped all of the beast mode fur on the back of the legs. I think this would have looked way better had this maybe been scattered throughout the entire robot design, but to be fair, the rest of the design I think looks banging. With the release of this Apelinq though, I guess this may be giving us a pretty good indication of what we can expect from the upcoming Studio Series release. And to be honest, I'm really excited to see if Hasbro's take on this guy is going to be anywhere near as badass as Yolopark's. Now, as we check out Apelinq's accessories, in addition to the over-the-shoulder cannons and the inbuilt forearm blades, both of which have been incredibly detailed. I mean, those blades in particular look savage. It's such a shame that at the very least, Apelinq never sliced one of Scourge's arms clean off. But we also see the return of a shed ton of interchangeable hands. Now, usually I am a pretty big fan of these, although considering that this guy is an AMK Pro X release, much like their G1 offerings, it would have been amazing had he also come packing with articulated fingers. But to be fair, this has been really nicely detailed and painted, and because at one point he was the leader of the Maximals, it would totally make sense for him to be rocking the iconic command hand. The next accessory though, I seriously think is a missed opportunity because we only get one fisted hand. Now the only time that we see Apelinq on screen, 9 times out of 10, he's always clenching his fists. So to see the inclusion of 2, I really don't think would have gone amiss, but again, much like the command hand, this has been brilliantly sculpted and detailed. And then finally, in addition to the pair of open hands, Apelinq is also packing a pair of accessory gripping hands. And if you do happen to own Optimus Primal, then his cyber blades are compatible with these hands. The final accessory though is by far the one which packs the biggest punch, and it's really what makes this Apelinq an AMK Pro X release. The details I think are looking crazy, and it's also magnetic, so you can attach Apelinq to the base, which I thought was pretty sweet, and I'm hoping they continue these display bases. It would be really cool to see Yolopark maybe approach the likes of Optimus Primal in his beast mode, because maybe we could see a full-blown diorama of a destroyed Predacon Scorponok. Turning to posability, which is the meat and potatoes when it comes here to these non-transforming Transformers. Unfortunately, this is likely to be where my biggest issues lay with this guy, because despite the paint apps definitely being a marked improvement in comparison to some of their previous releases, I really don't think the build quality is. Unfortunately, I have found most of the external components to be super easy to pop off. Now, I know these are model kits, so if you really wanted to, you could glue the components into place, but that wasn't something that we needed to do with the past kits. But it still ain't terrible, so let's see what this guy's packing. To begin with, when it comes to this guy's head sculpt, I would definitely recommend to rip that cybernetic mohawk clean off, because it then allows for a much greater range. So the head and the neck are packing multiple different hinge joints. It can also then tilt side to side as well as rotate left to right. When it comes here to these over-the-shoulder blasters, these two can also be positioned up and down, so depending on what mighty threat this guy goes up against, they should definitely be packing a punch. When it comes to Apelinq shoulder articulation, this is still pretty decent. So these are ball jointed, these can crunch forwards, they can crunch backwards, they can also hinge out to the side. Now, due to the flexible plastic, this does allow for a pretty decent range, which may be the reason as to why Yolopark have decided to go for a slightly softer material. I guess we'll just have to wait and see if this is something which they integrate into all of their upcoming releases, but the shoulders are then also able to hinge both forwards and hinge backwards. Despite packing an asymmetrical design, you can totally take some of these additional armaments, move them out of the way to allow for a pretty decent bicep cut. In addition to that, Apelinq is also rocking a single jointed elbow, although the wrists are packing ball joints, so these can get super expressive. Now let's check out the torso articulation, which I can't lie to you guys, I do think is a little lackluster. So this is able to crunch backwards and crunch forwards, but that is pretty much it, and I believe this is the exact same range which we did see on their previous Optimus Primal. But in addition to that, it can then also rock side to side, which to be fair ain't too bad. And then finally, he is actually packing a pretty decent waist cut, so you still are able to get this guy into some pretty dynamic poses. When it comes here to the hip joints, much like some of their past releases, these are packing drop down hinges, which allows for a fantastic high kick kicking forwards. That is amazing. In addition to that, he's also packing a pretty decent range going outwards. There is then a thigh swivel, and then when it comes here to the knee, this is packing a double jointed bend, which I think looks awesome. Even the tiny little piston is put to work, which is seriously cool. And then finally, at least when it comes to the core articulation, as we check out the ankles, these can rock backwards, they can rock forwards, they can then also rock side to side, and then finally can also rotate left to right. In addition to that, he's also packing individual toe articulation. So much like some of the past AMK releases, this guy is stacked when it comes to articulation. It is just a shame that ultimately some of the points are slightly compromised, which for a $60 release, I do think is a bit of a shame. But as you guys all know, to see what the old leader of the Maximals is truly capable of, now let's put him through the pose test. Now, comparison time, here we have Apelinq stacked up against his successor, the legendary Optimus Primal. Now, this AMK Pro X release most definitely is a big step up in the paint department, although I've got to be honest with you guys, I do think it's a step down when it comes to overall build quality and plastic quality. This $30 Optimus Primal, at least to myself, feels way more stable in comparison here to this guy. You know, when you're handling him, overall he does begin to feel rather mushy. Now, in his defense, he is a pre-production sample, so this may just be because he's an early release, because I just don't think it feels all that great, and unfortunately, due to the rubbery nature, the pieces don't really click securely into place as they did with some of the past model kits. Next up, here he is stacked up against the Grim Reaper of the Transformers. We have Terracon Scourge, which was an amazing figure, and it is a shame to see that this $30 figure is packing individual finger articulation, whereas unfortunately that was not something we saw here with this $60 release. Running through a few quick fire comparisons, first up we have Yolopark's Optimus Prime, Maximal Animal Cheetor Rhinox, who to be honest I wouldn't mind seeing reissued, fully painted to the max. Rounding it off for the Yolopark comparisons, here we have Bumblebee, and now moving into some mainline Studio Series comparisons, here we have Leader Class Scourge. Now whereas I did think that maybe he was a little too small to scale with actual Yolopark figures, I don't think that's the case at all when it comes around here to some of these Studio Series releases. So if you are like myself, you're a little too impatient to wait for the upcoming Studio Series Apelinq, then I don't think for now this will be a bad stand-in at all, and when it does come round to robot mode, I doubt very much so that Studio Series version will be able to hold a candle in comparison. Next up, here is the buzzworthy Bumblebee Voyager Class Optimus Prime, then the Leader Class Optimus Primal, and this scaling makes way more sense to myself. Definitely does appear to be on par with the differences that we did see between these two when it came round to their beast modes. Winding down to Deluxe Class, here we have Bumblebee, and then finally Airazor, who much like Apelinq, unfortunately never actually transformed in the movie, and she is the only Maximal up until this point not to so far receive the Yolopark treatment. So considering how much of a banging job Yolopark did when it came round to Apelinq's design, I really hope that they also touch base with Airazor. And whilst they're at it, I'm also hoping that they do decide to dip their toes into some full-blown beast modes. And so, wrapping up on this review for Yolopark's Transformers Rise of the Beasts Apelinq. When it comes to a design, I think Yolopark have well and truly knocked it out of the park. This guy looks insanely detailed. It really does appear to myself like this would match the actual beast mode that we saw from the Rise of the Beast movie, and it's fantastic to see Yolopark pumping out what is essentially a conceptualized character. It would be amazing to see their own take on a Bumblebee movie Megatron, but the details and the painting are just incredible. You know, this definitely is the biggest draw when it comes to these brand new AMK Pro X releases, although unfortunately I don't think this is a home run for Yolopark. There definitely are quite a few issues with this guy, most noticeably would be the build quality. Now granted, that could be simply down to this being a pre-production sample, but as I mentioned previously, I've reviewed pre-production samples beforehand from Yolopark and have never found them to have any build quality issues, so it is a shame for the most part to see them cast this guy primarily out of soft plastic. I'm hoping that's a decision that they do decide to kind of go back on, because the plastic used previously I thought was 10 times better. The display base looks amazing, and to be fair, the accessories are decent, but for an AMK Pro release, I definitely think this guy should have included some die-cast, maybe fully articulated hands, and definitely an LED feature when it comes to the head, much like we have been seeing from their AMK Pro G1 Optimus Prime and Megatron. Overall though, it still is an amazing looking figure, and for the price point, to be fair, I think he's still pretty competitive alongside some of the other premium collectibles out there. If you are in the market for picking this guy up, then definitely be sure to check out the links down below. Make sure to use the discount code Prime vs Prime. I would love to get your guys' thoughts down below, and until my next video, I thank you all so much for watching. Transform and roll out!